Does this make us partners?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? Keith!
Hello everyone, welcome back to Backlot Banter. I'm Tanner Dykstra, doing a solo review today. That's right, I am without my co-host, who might just be a figment of my imagination, Tucker Hazel. But that's fitting today, because today I'm reviewing the film If. John Krasinski's If, the much-awaited original family film of the summer. We'll get into it and my thoughts on that and how successful it is at potentially being a live-action Pixar movie, as many people were calling it, especially people related to the film. But before we get into all that, I want to remind you to please subscribe to Backlot Banter. Go ahead and ring that bell for you to get notified for all the new movie reviews that we post weekly, as well as other topics in discussion and review videos that we do along the way. If you love movies, you should be subscribing to Backlot Banter, and you should be joining our Discord server. That link is in the description. There, you can talk about movies with us, of course, but you can also talk about video games or music or whatever interests you might have. We have something for everybody there. Speaking of something for everybody, this is a film geared towards family audiences. Well, audiences that have been somewhat lacking in theatrical releases this year. We got, of course, Kung Fu Panda about 2 months ago now, over a month ago for sure. And now we have John Krasinski's If, a live-action film with, plenty of wacky CGI characters, and on the note of it being a live-action Pixar film, which is something that I've heard, brought up a number of times. It was clearly part of the pitch for this movie to Paramount, and it was even said in like a 4-minute weird featurette before this film. Like, I already bought tickets to the film, but you're showing me a featurette of If? I don't know. Besides the point. On that note of it trying to match that sort of imaginative wonder and family enjoyment of a Pixar movie, especially, the platonic ideal of Pixar from, like, its early days up through the, maybe, like, the mid-2010s, let's say. It's not quite to that quality level, but what I will say about If is that it has an immense amount of heart to it. It does not feel like an empty corporate product just trying to sell tickets like many children's films nowadays do. I'm thinking of things like Kung Fu Panda 4 or even Despicable Me 4 coming out soon. This one feels truly like Krasinski in that featurette, that I had mentioned, was making it for his daughters. Krasinski himself is a character in the film, a couple of characters actually, but our film is really following our character B, portrayed by Cailey Fleming. She is the John Krasinski character's daughter, and she is, John Krasinski is her only parent in the film. Her mother passes away at some point between our opening montage and the actual content of the film. She is a character that I found very interesting, and she's a very assured young actress, and it was good to see this film sort of put on her shoulders more, because I think she could really carry it, and all of the acting off of CGI characters that are not really there. I thought she was quite good. Her character is essentially like, she lost her parent, her father is in the hospital now, she's afraid of losing him, she's having to grow up very quickly and, try to be an adult. She's very much assuring everyone, I'm not a kid, I've had to do all these things, I have to take care of myself, all this kind of stuff. And of course, as one might expect in a kid's movie like this, she has to remember the joys of being a child, as do many people in this film. The plot is very much concerned with all of these imaginary friends, all of our wacky CGI characters, voiced by numerous celebrities who I'll talk about, trying to find new kids or new matches, essentially. Her, B, Cailey Fleming's character, and, of course, Ryan Reynolds' character, whose name is Cal, end up running what is effectively a matchmaking service for imaginary friends, trying to find new kids for them after they've been forgotten or abandoned by their original children who are now adults. At least that is what they set out to do. And this is very mild spoilers for the film. There's not any huge plot twists or anything that you might not see coming. It's not massive spoilers for If, but if you truly care, I guess I'm going to tell you a plot element. They don't end up matching these imaginary friends to any children characters, really. There's one example of that, but truly what happens is they have the adults who originally held these imaginary friends remember them and reconnect with them. And that's a point that I want to bring up, especially in conversation with that Pixar thing, that live-action Pixar thing. Not to go too CinemaSins here, but I would say that many of our more imaginative Pixar movies, things like Inside Out, for example, because there's a sequel to that coming out this year, have a sort of easily explained internal logic that children can follow along with, as can adults. If doesn't really have that, it's quite confusing. Like, I went with a group of people who are similar age, and none of us could really tell what the rules of this world are. People presumably can't see imaginary friends unless you're like a special person like B is, or like Cal is. The rules of like how they exist in the world, or how children see them, if they can see them, even if they believe that they are there, is very confusing, I would say. For a children's movie, it's fine. You know, kids aren't going to pay that much attention to them. There were a couple of kids in our theater when we saw it, and they were having a good time. They were, you know, jabbering a little bit and jumping up and down, which I don't have any issue with. It's a kid's movie. So yeah, I guess from that standpoint, it's kind of hard to follow along with like the actual plot of If, but that's not really why you're there. What you're really here for If is the heart, the sentimentality, and that is here in spades. John Krasinski, as I mentioned, said that he is making this film for his two daughters, and it really feels like that. It feels like a movie that children can very easily enjoy. The CGI characters are fun, they're colorful, they're making jokes, and you know the main character is quite likable and very competent. And that's fun to see in a kids movie. Is like our child protagonist knows what they're doing a lot of the time. It's very good. It seems to be channeling Pixar, as I mentioned, but also I feel a lot of Spielberg. It's very Spielbergian in its sense of having a lot of heart, having a lot of sentimentality. But again, not amongst the best of that. I would say it's more, if we're comparing it to Spielberg, it's more BFG and less E.T. But they do take certain steps to bring it up to that like heightened level of these titans of family filmmaking like Steven Spielberg or Pixar. You have Steven Spielberg's cinematographer, his director of photography here, Janusz Kaminski, who's worked on many collaborations with him, and through his lenses and through his eyes here, this film looks very good. There's a couple of sequences here that I'm like, this does look like a Spielberg movie, or at least, the very least, a Kaminski shot movie. Like, he's not being brought down by the directorial hand of John Krasinski here at all. Don't get me wrong there. It looks beautiful. Like, the lighting sources and everything are very natural. They're all in the setting there. You also have Michael Giacchino, who's done many Pixar scores, doing the score for this film, and that's very good as well. All of this stuff sort of combines to make it very romantic seeming, very nostalgic, and that's what's important to If as a film that is literally about like remembering your childhood, bringing out your inner child, that kind of thing. On the note of Ryan Reynolds, since I have not talked about him yet. Ryan Reynolds, to me, is sort of an interesting movie star because he kind of seems to have one mode. That is, being smarmy, being a smart aleck. His Deadpool persona has really taken over his presence in modern film. And this being a very sentimental, very heart-on-its-sleeve kind of movie, he can't be the main focus of the film, so he isn't. There isn't a lot of Ryan Reynolds in this film, and there's not a lot for him to do. He's still doing his, he's more jaded in this film. He's like, well, these imaginary friends, they're always bugging me. Since he was initially alone in his sort of matchmaking duties, I would say. So, from that standpoint, I mean, he's kind of a non-factor in this film for me. Like, he's fine, but he doesn't weigh down the film in any great sense because that sort of, jaded nature has to be sort of taught out of him as he opens up his heart a little bit. The celebrity cast, there's lots of them. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen them rattle off 2 screens worth of names. And they are not a huge factor in this film either. As I mentioned at the beginning of this review, it's a lot about Kaylee Fleming, our B character, and her father in the hospital. Our imaginary friends, the one that gets the most play is obviously the big one on the poster and all the marketing material, is Steve Carrell as Blue, who is a purple monster, but don't worry about it. I mean, he's quite good. I mean, I can easily see why you get Steve Carrell to do a role like this, where he's very, he's very poppy. He's all sunshines and rainbows, and he's all happy all the time. And he's silly, he's goofy, and it's a good time. As for the rest of like our imaginary friends, they get like, if you take any one example of them, they maybe get 4 or 5 lines. Like, it's very much just like a revolving door of celebrity cast members here. I mean, you have people like Matt Damon and George Clooney coming in who are you're only gonna get for kind of a day, it seems like. And you can kind of feel that. Like, none of the imaginary friend characters past Blue and then Blossom, who's voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, are getting a lot of time. And that's fine, it's fun when they're doing their little audition, basically like a talent show, matchmaking deal. It's fun, it's cute. There's some cute designs in there, there's a couple of fun jokes. Bradley Cooper voices an imaginary friend that is a glass of water whose child made him because he lived in Arizona and was thirsty, and so he kind of has this identity crisis where he's like, what am I? I was just made for this very simple purpose. It's fun. I don't know. Either this film's gonna work for you or it doesn't. It's really a matter of if it can sort of drill to your emotional core. If you're the kind of person who can get easily invested in these sort of family stories, especially when they're somewhat well told, like I think they are in If, then I think you're gonna like this one. If you have kids, if you're thinking about bringing your family to this, I think you're gonna like this. I think your kids are gonna like it. All I would say is that from a story standpoint, it's a little bit weak. If we're really trying to critique the screenwriting element here from Krasinski, he wrote and produced and directed this film and stars in it. It's a little bit, it's weaker, especially when you're trying to compare it, when you're trying to live up to the heights of like a Spielberg or a Pixar. I mean, those are the greats, and you're not exactly there yet, Krasinski. And he's no slouch in this film, I should say. It's solid. It's good. I'm going to give this film a 6.4 out of 10. Like I said, lots of sentimentality, lots of heart, very cute, very funny, very goofy, but lacks a sense of real progression. This film is a little bit slow at times. I think a couple of my friends that I went with actually fell asleep during watching this film. And again, lacking that sort of like, that internal logic that isn't key to Pixar films, but makes them really last in the imaginations of kids and people like me who watch them as children and are growing up with them and thinking back on them as like, wow, those are really well-written films. And wow, they have all the emotion and heart, but they are also very tight, very concise screenplays. If is just not that. But it's fine. It's solid. It's a solid original summer family hit here, so I would implore you to go and see this film. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.